Welcome everyone to Enigma's Analysis. I'm your host, Mr. Enigma, and today we are covering the AFC West, or as those of you who are paying attention might recognize, the division containing the defending Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. Can us NFL fans go into the 2020 season just assuming that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to go right back to where they were last season, or is the Super Bowl hangover a very real thing? I had way too much Super Bowl last night. I feel like I'm going to be nauseous and have a headache for the next year. Now for this video, I do have a mild confession to make. You've never actually watched football before? You're coming out of the closet? You're actually a woman? I knew it the whole time. I knew it. As you'll see later in this video, my justifications for how I think some of these teams are going to do, it's not the greatest. Normally, I can justify every decision I've ever made in life, like going into massive student loan debt for a film degree, like not asking out the girl of my dreams in the 9th grade. Oh, God. But there's a few predictions in this video where I kind of just have to shrug my shoulders and say, call it a gut feeling. Let's start with the Denver Broncos, a team that's been middling or worse for quite a few years now. For too long, the defense has had to carry them as John Elway searches for the quarterback of his dreams now that Peyton Manning is long gone. But at the end of last year, after Joe Flacco had gone down to injury, oh no, what a loss. How horrible. Drew Lock, a 4th-round draft pick who nobody really expected anything of, came in, and the team won 4 of their last 5 games, only losing to the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, the people who run the Broncos organization clearly seem to think that this Drew Lock is their guy. They spent their top draft pick on a wide receiver, traded for Melvin Gordon, who, in addition to Phillip Lindsay, now makes for a pretty vicious backfield. They've still got first-round draft pick Noah Fant at tight end, and even though their offensive tackles stink, the interior of their offensive line should now be pretty good. So their offensive line is like 70% of Disney movie protagonists. Weak on the outside, but strong on the inside. Throwing Courtland Sutton as their number 1 wide receiver, and Drew Lock is now loaded up full of weapons. It seems like one of his biggest strengths is that he's mobile, so obviously with the Broncos' continuing offensive line struggles, hey, if all else fails, at least this guy can get out of dodge on his feet and run for some yardage. That's all well and good, and I don't doubt for a second that Drew Lock is the best option they've had in years. I'm just a little hesitant to call him the franchise quarterback, considering that other than a weird blowout game against the Texans, the guy never threw for more than 200 yards in a game. Being serviceable for a handful of games as a rookie is a good start, but you got to show a little more before anybody can bet money on you to win it all. Fortunately for Drew, though, he might not have to be excellent for the Broncos to go places. The defensive line is going to be a lot stronger this year because Bradley Chubb, who was injured for most of last year, is going to be right there with Von Miller and company getting sacks left and right. They did lose Chris Harris at corner, but they replaced him with A.J. Bouye. Not bad, right? I have to admit, the Broncos don't completely blow me away in any aspects, but they do look pretty solid across the board. And while I'd be pretty hesitant to say that they look significantly better than, say, the Titans or the Jets, or even some of the teams we'll talk about later in this video, their schedule doesn't look that tough. And in another season, I might say they just narrowly missed the playoffs. But with 3 wildcard teams from each conference, I think the Broncos squeak in as the 7th seed. Granted, in my scenario, a team only has to go 9-7 for the 7th seed, but hey, a playoff berth is a playoff berth, right? For the record, this opinion doesn't seem to be much of a hot take anymore. As the offseason rolls on, I keep hearing more and more reliable voices saying that the Broncos are going into the playoffs this year. Alright, I guess that makes me a bandwagoner on this one. Oh well. Next up is a lovable ragtag group of losers known as the... Oh wait, no, never mind. Sorry, it's the defending Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I'm warning you, Chiefs, since you just won the Super Bowl for the first time in 50 years, you've lost any sort of sympathy like, oh, it's been forever since they won it, they deserve it, points from me. The more a team wins championships, the more they are the scum of the earth in my book. The Kansas City Chiefs. Good for them finally winning the Super Bowl. Those fans have waited a long time. Really? The Chiefs again? You know what? Hey, at least it's not the New England Patriots. All right. But seriously, Chiefs, enough already. Let someone else win. I'm sick of you. If the Chiefs just win the Super Bowl again. God, why do I even watch this crap? I hate it so much. They're my least favorite team ever. God, Andy Reid, you fat piece of... So let's not get carried away with winning here. Truth be told, to the casual fan, it's always tempting to predict that the previous Super Bowl winner is going to kill it the next year. In truth, it's about 50-50 for how often that happens. But I gotta say, the Chiefs are in a good position to not only do well this year, but maybe even win it all again. Chief reason being is that their team just doesn't look that much different than the previous year. Admittedly, they lost Kendall Fuller at cornerback, which leaves them very thin at that position. But I will say that they are strong at safety, and it's been something the Chiefs have generally been able to work around under Andy Reid. And for a long stretch of last season, the big knock on them was that their run defense was atrocious. And somehow throughout the year, they fixed that up. Rest assured, the Chiefs don't win that Super Bowl, regardless of how good their offense was, unless their defense improved like it did. In fact, the only real knock you could have on that team was that they didn't have a great running game. So of course they went out and got the best running back in the draft. Whether or not Andy Reid had a Super Bowl championship under his belt or not, he's been getting teams deep into the playoffs for years and years on end. He's always creative, he's always inventive, and he's got Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. So it's not like this is a team where you can just go, oh, other teams have tape on them now, they'll figure them out. As long as Patrick Mahomes is on his rookie contract, and therefore the Chiefs aren't breaking their salary cap trying to afford to keep him, the Chiefs are going to be in a Super Bowl window big time. So honestly, even though it seems like it's always a safe assumption to go, like, something will happen to them along the way, some team will pull an upset on them, which is possible, there just doesn't seem to be any logical reason to assume that the Chiefs won't be deep into the playoffs, possibly in the Super Bowl, possibly winning the Super Bowl again. Rest assured, unless there's some major injury bug that sweeps the team, every opponent's going to see Kansas City on their schedule and go, oh no. So right now, I've got the Chiefs going 12-4 and winning the division, just because there's only so many teams in the league who are capable of stopping them on any given week. Alright, the Las Vegas Raiders. Knock on wood if you're with me. God, how many times did we have to hear that during Hard Knocks? By about midway last season, the Raiders looked like they were ready to surprise everybody. And then they just kind of... Their pass defense was not good. And even though offensively they moved the ball pretty well, they got a lot of yardage, they weren't great at scoring. So the Raiders have done a lot of heavy lifting during the offseason. A lot of free agency moves, a lot of draft picks. So almost every major position area has been addressed to some degree or another. If you're looking at the team's roster on paper, the names look pretty good across the board. Not great, there's not a lot of franchise players, but solid. So there's a lot of new names on this team that kind of has the feel that they need to start getting over the hump this year, or else people are going to really start asking questions. But what's that? Oh, that's right. They're in a new city this year. I'm sure all the players will be ready to go each week and are going to stay 100% focused on the game. Oh, wait, it's Las Vegas and they're a bunch of rich young people. Ha ha. That's going to be fun. Does FanDuel have any way to bet on their drug habits? What's the over-under on the number of cocaine addictions by the end of the season? I kid. I'm sure they're just going to go watch Elvis impersonators each night. So here's where we get into my, call it a gut feeling portion of this video. I don't have a ton of tangible reasons to think the Raiders will be bad, but I just get this vibe about them that they're, I don't think they have the same disastrous setup as the Cleveland Browns did last year, but remember how good they looked on paper and somehow everything just didn't gel together? That's kind of what I expect from the Raiders. Like, picture in your head John Gruden coaching Derek Carr and the Raiders to a deep playoff run. I just don't see it. You might as well say, try to picture George Lucas making another good movie in his lifetime. It ain't gonna happen. I don't know. Maybe Henry Ruggs ends up being a total bust as the number one wide receiver taken in the draft. Maybe the defense gets caught with prostitutes in some seedy hotel room. I don't know. Somehow or another, this team doesn't thrive. I think you'll see them crush a few teams really badly, and then the fans will get their hopes up, and then they just won't be able to beat any really good team. Granted, my reasoning stinks. If you're a Raiders fan watching this, I don't blame you for throwing stuff at your monitor right now, although I will not be held responsible for any broken devices, nor will I be paying to replace them. In theory, you have plenty of reasons to be optimistic about your team. This franchise has just been losing for so long. I don't really know that this group of guys knows how to win. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong and it's these guys going 9-7 instead of the Broncos. But for right now, I've got the Raiders going 7-9. Knock on wood if you're with me. Alright, last but not, well, maybe least, the Los Angeles Chargers. Last season, the major headlines for this team were that the offensive line was woefully injured. Not only should everyone be healthy this year, but they also got Brian Bulaga from the Packers at right tackle. Whew. Melvin Gordon was holding out. Whatever, he's a Bronco now. And Phillip Rivers, sometimes for good, sometimes for bad, basically just chucked the ball as hard as he could every game. The Chargers drafted Justin Herbert to be their quarterback in the future. Although, fans have to really hope that he's not going to see the field during year one because he's supposed to sit on the bench while Tyrod Taylor takes the helm. Okay, on the one hand, Tyrod Taylor does have a winning record overall, but did you see him a couple years ago when he was starting for Cleveland at the beginning of the year? There's a reason they brought Baker Mayfield in as soon as they did. Taylor is painfully conservative at quarterback. Maybe that's what the Chargers want right now because they're so used to Phillip Rivers. With the offense bumbling around like it did last year, it really went unnoticed just how good this defense was. The defense kept them in a lot of games last season, and even though there's been quite a bit of shuffling around here and there, the defense still looks like it's stacked. Linval Joseph from the Vikings on the defensive line, drafted a linebacker in the first round. So I'd expect a lot of low-scoring games for the Chargers this year. They won't score a lot on offense because Tyrod Taylor, even with a decent receiver core, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, not too impressed with Austin Eckler at running back, isn't going to do a ton to move the ball. And to be honest, maybe they don't expect him to. Maybe they just want him to be a game manager while the excellent defense shuts the opposing team down. And a team can potentially get pretty far with that ideology. But this is the Chargers. No team manages to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory like this franchise. If there are ways to make a massive comeback in a game and then somehow blow it at the end when it's close, the Chargers will find a way to do it. The Chargers always find a way to lose. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, caller 93. For $10,000, here is your question.
Yeah.
In what state is New York City located? Is it A, Montana, B, New York, C, Pakistan?
God, could you imagine if someone said C?
I'm sorry.
Wait. No, that's not my answer. That's not my answer. Well, it was nice walking you home. And hey, I had a great night. I'll talk to you soon, okay?
Well, I've got a bottle of wine we can crack open if you'd like to stay for a while.
Yeah, and then we can have some sex. Hey, why's that mace in your hand? What? It's hard to shake losing from a team's DNA. I think the 2020 Chargers are going to be a masterclass in how far a team can get by being pretty good but really weak at quarterback. Now, if Taylor does bumble as much as I expect him to, you have to imagine we'll see Justin Herbert by the end of the year, and that'll definitely be interesting, for better or worse. Still, I have the Chargers going 7-9. Again, if you're a Chargers fan, I don't blame you one bit for thinking I'm full of it. Just like with the Raiders, they got a decent lineup, but I just don't see it. So what say you? Right now I got the Chiefs winning the division at 12-4 and at least going to the Super Bowl again. I got the Broncos sneaking into a wild card spot at 9-7, and I got the Raiders and Chargers continuing to bumble around below 500. But what say you? Let me know in the comments. Are the Chiefs poised for a bad Super Bowl hangover? Am I being too generous with the Broncos? Are me and the general lack of hype towards the Raiders and the Chargers justified, or are we full of it? Knock on wood if you're with me. Remember to like my videos, subscribe to the channel. Next time around, we're going to be moving into the NFC. Enigma out.